In this video, I'm making a custom case for a media center PC made from an old HP laptop. I'm working with acrylic and combining it with veneer, and I believe this might be somewhat inspirational. The design I came up with is simple and elegant. The box measures about 28 by 28 centimeters and it's 6 centimeters high. Side panels are covered in veneer, while the top is spray painted white. I started from disassembling an old HP laptop, as I needed precise dimensions of the motherboard to determine the size of the case. I won't cover this part in detail, as it's unlikely that you have the same laptop. If you need help taking apart your computer, I suggest searching for a service manual. After extracting the motherboard, I measured the PCB and figured that 28 by 28 centimeters will be sufficient size. I had a not so large piece of acrylic. It wasn't big enough to make sides from a single element, so I cut two 6 centimeters wide pieces. Next, I marked bending points, heated up the acrylic with heat gun, and modeled it around the table leg. This isn't the best way to do that, but at that very moment I couldn't think of a better way. To join both, I cut two pieces of acrylic, sanded the surface a little bit, so both acrylic elements have better chance to stack together, make some of that two-component glue, apply the adhesive, put all three elements together and left it to dry. Next, I traced the shape of the top panel and cut the acrylic. Around the corners, I cut off as much as I could and used sanding paper to make a nice round shape. I mixed some more glue, applied it and put sides onto the top panel. After glue has dried, I sanded down the excess of the material. Next, I put the motherboard on the box to determine the size of the I/O port's opening, as well as the side exhaust vent cutout. I marked both openings, drilled holes in the corners, and cut the acrylic using Dremel. After extracting most of the material, I changed the Dremel bit and sanded down the edges so the cutout looks more presentable. Next, I filled in some imperfections and sanded the filler once it has dried. Again, I didn't have a piece of veneer long enough that would wrap around and I had to work with what I had. So I cut a piece of veneer in half, clamped one onto the plastic case, sprayed some water onto it, and gently forced it around the corner. After it has dried, I did the same with the other piece. I figured that it would look better if both pieces meet at an angle, so I cut the veneer and proceeded with gluing it onto the panel. I used to attach veneer using contact glue, but working with a round shape, I was afraid that the probability of something going wrong is too high, so I decided to try using a regular wood glue, which wasn't the best idea, but I'll come back to this later. After the glue has dried, I proceeded with removing the excess of veneer with utility knife and sanding down the edges. I/O ports and air vents openings were a bit tricky, but that's where Dremel has once again proven to be money well spent. I cut a piece of steel mesh that I bought for my desk PC build, cut off all four corners to make it fit. Then I established mounting points, drilled holes and fixed M3 inserts. To attach the component's base to the acrylic cover, I cut two pieces of angled aluminum, drilled holes, and fixed M4 inserts. Again, I mixed some glue to attach aluminum to plastic. Next, I filled in cracks in veneer that were results of using a water-based wood glue. I thoroughly sanded the case on both sides and the top, preparing it for painting. I masked the sides with tape and applied 3 layers of white matte paint. After paint has dried, I removed the tape and flipped the case to establish positioning of screws attaching components base to the shell. I made holes with a drill and a file. I applied wax on the sides to bring out the texture and color. Next, I attached the motherboard to the base with aluminum spacers in between and fixed it to the outer shell. The last thing was some plastic spacers that elevate the construction a couple millimeters off the surface. I think this build turned out pretty amazing, especially if you consider that the total cost came to around $20. The case looks minimal and elegant, and would easily get wife's approval. What would need some more attention is the power button assembly and the power connector contraption. If I was going to actually use it, I would definitely sort it out, but as you know, most of my projects are prototypes that I create because I enjoy making something out of nothing, and I document the process for your entertainment. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.